I am employed at a gas station in New Zealand, and despite the challenges of dealing with difficult customers, I have always genuinely enjoyed my job. The particular station where I started working has a significant number of homeless individuals or people who are facing financial struggles, even if they technically have a place to live. There is one homeless man who, over time, has become my stalker. When I initially joined the job, my colleagues informed me about this man. They mentioned that he would come in and request a free cup of hot water, to which he would add some sugar sachets. They described him as a bit peculiar, but generally harmless, except for his tendency to frequently use profanity. Feeling sorry for him, especially during the winter, I willingly provided him with the hot water. However, this man's visits were not limited to just collecting the water and leaving. He would often go on nonsensical rants, and I could never comprehend what he was saying. He would use offensive language excessively, and intersperse it with gibberish. Some of my co-workers stopped serving him because he disturbed other customers, but one co-worker and I continued to do so. In hindsight, this is likely where the problem began, as he started showing up only when I was working alone. My shifts were from 2 p.m. to 11 p.m, and he would always appear at night. He never came on my days off, which varied each week, so he must have observed and noted my work schedule. By passing by during the day, a behavior I noticed him doing quite often. Gradually, I started feeling increasingly uncomfortable with his presence and the way he looked at me. However, being raised in a Christian family, I was reluctant to turn him away. My grandfather always told me as a child that manners were important and never to turn my back on charity. So, I continued to serve him, but then he began making comments about my appearance, followed by inappropriate remarks about my body. He stopped asking for water and instead seemed to only want me. He would enter the store, head straight towards me, and linger for what felt like hours. The final straw came when he winked at me and said that he had always considered me a friend. The way he said it sent shivers down my spine. At that point, I decided to stop letting him in whenever I was working alone. I locked the doors as soon as the last customer left the forecourt because I knew he would show up. The problem was that I knew he was watching me. I could sense it. As soon as the forecourt was empty, he would approach the doors. I caught him watching me multiple times a day from alleyways and bushes. We even had him trespassed from the premises, hoping it would resolve the issue. Unfortunately, it didn't. He continued to watch me, attempt to gain entry, and yell at me through the doors when I refused to let him in. I called the police each time he appeared, but he managed to escape before they arrived. This went on 4 months, leaving me in a constant state of fear. I was scared 24/7 at work and even experienced nightmares at home. There were numerous incidents of harassment, attempted entries, and sightings of him watching me. However, the worst incident occurred while I was on forecourt duty, filling cars and cleaning the pumps. We have speakers at all the pumps that are connected to an intercom inside, allowing us to communicate with customers without going outside. It's a large site with 12 pumps. While I was outside, I heard my co-worker's panicked voice calling me inside through the speakers. Assuming it was a customer causing trouble since it was daytime, I quickly went inside. However, as soon as I entered, the doors were locked behind me. My co-worker, wide-eyed with fear, pointed toward the bushes and said, "Look over there." When I turned to look, there he was, peering in. The scariest part was that he had one foot lunged forward, as if he were ready to run and attack the moment the doors opened. My heart sank, and I immediately called the police, thankfully. They arrived swiftly, and he was apprehended. I was trembling and in shock. We all believed I was safe at the new site, as the police officer in charge had assured us that he would never find me there. However, just a month ago, the officer handling my case informed me that I had to appear in court and testify against him. The fear of seeing him again was overwhelming, but I convinced myself it was for the best. I had just come to terms with the fact that I could do it, and that he needed to be held accountable. But then the worst happened. He found me at the new site. I still don't know how he did it, but I suspect he asked a new employee at my previous site who wasn't aware of the stalking and restraining order, and they unknowingly disclosed my new location. He must have taken a bus or made an incredibly long walk to get there. He was approaching the doors rapidly when I spotted him, and I ran away in a panic, nearly knocking over my boss, who witnessed the fear on my face and asked what was wrong. In a state of shock and fear, I can't even remember what I said, but my manager locked us in her office and provided incredible support. She called the police and handled everything. I was trembling and in shock. While we were on the phone with the police, we saw him circling the site at least 3 times before the police arrived, apprehended him, and placed him under arrest. Thank God, needless to say, I couldn't sleep for the next few days as I awaited the court date. The fear of him being released was overwhelming. 2 days before the hearing, I prayed that he would be convicted and that I would be safe. I honestly had no idea what I would do if he was released, and knew where to find me again. This may sound dramatic, but anyone who has experienced the trauma of being stalked will understand. I even made a comment: if he gets away, I think I'll kill myself. I genuinely felt that hopeless. Thankfully, my prayers were answered the next day when the officer handling my case called me. He said, "I've got some good news." He changed his plea to guilty. I was at work, and I jumped up and down in front of customers. It was the safest I had felt in nearly a year, which had been the longest year of my life. But for now, it's over. Well, mostly. I have a sentencing case coming up where the duration of his sentence will be determined. But for now, I can finally relax, knowing this monster is off the streets and, most importantly, unable to come near me. Deep down, I know it's not truly over. My gut tells me that when he's released, he'll come back. This man is obsessed and mentally ill. The only thing keeping me going is the saying, "Don't borrow trouble before it shows up at your doorstep." But that's the problem. I know he'll be back at my doorstep as soon as he can. Last night, my boyfriend and I were driving home from Universal Studios in Orlando. Due to road closures, we ended up taking a route we had never been on before, through a desolate area. Unfortunately, my boyfriend's car had a broken speedometer, and he had to manually reset the mileage after refueling, which becomes relevant in a moment. We were driving along a deserted road, with not a single car in sight, when my boyfriend noticed that we had reached the 130-mile mark on his odometer. Realizing we needed gas, we searched for nearby gas stations and found one. However, it turned out to be closed. In a hurry, we located another gas station just 5 minutes away. Here's where the story takes a weird turn. My boyfriend thought he had closed the gas cap, but while driving on the dark road, we heard a loud bang. It dawned on him that he had forgotten to put the gas cap back on. So, we found ourselves driving on this desolate road, searching for the lost gas cap. Eventually, my boyfriend pulled over and discovered that the gas cap was still attached to the car. We resumed our journey towards the other gas station, but suddenly, a terrible thought crossed my mind about something going wrong at that particular location. I tried to dismiss the feeling, as we needed gas, and we were in an area where AAA assistance wasn't readily available. Upon reaching the gas station, we noticed that the lights were dim, and the road leading to it was a dead end. The only way out was to turn left, or go straight from the gas station. My boyfriend got out of the car to check if we could get gas, and that uneasy feeling intensified. I had never experienced anything like it before. My stomach dropped, and I was overcome with fear. Despite having been in disturbing situations in the past, including nearly being kidnapped twice, being followed home, witnessing a fatal accident, and even encountering paranormal activity, this feeling was unparalleled. I saw a white car approaching from the road, intending to turn left. It's important to note that there was no one else on the road. The car pulled up, and the driver noticed my boyfriend. However, when he realized that someone else was in the car, he abruptly reversed and sped off. I found this behavior extremely strange, especially considering my boyfriend drives a nice sports car. Panic took over, and I started screaming my boyfriend's name, fearing the worst. Unfortunately, due to the darkness, I couldn't capture the license plate. This situation frightened me beyond words. While it may not seem excessively scary, it was one of the most terrifying things I have ever witnessed. I didn't know if I was about to witness my boyfriend being robbed at gunpoint or something equally horrifying. The feeling and thoughts I had just 10 minutes earlier only added to the fear. Thankfully, we eventually found a gas station with other people around, and we made it home safe and sound. Upon arriving home, my dad informed me that the road we had been driving on was notorious for the discovery of numerous bodies. I sincerely hope one ever finds themselves in such a situation, and to the person who intended harm to my boyfriend, let's never cross paths. In 2014, while on my way to my great-grandparents' house in Goose Creek, South Carolina, a particular incident occurred. We had departed around 11 a.m. with the intention of reaching our destination before dinner. Our purpose for the trip was to embark on a cruise vacation that my great-grandmother had generously arranged. The members in our car included me, my mother, father, 2 aunts, great-grandfather, great-grandmother, and a few other friends of my great-grandmother. During this episode, it was just my mother and me in the car, along with most of our luggage. My father was due to join us a few days later due to work commitments. Therefore, we decided to drive early to have ample time with the family and catch up on the usual family drama. At the time, my family hadn't faced the issues that have since strained our relationships, so I was genuinely looking forward to the trip and spending time with them. We began our journey on scenic back roads, eventually transitioning to the highway as we approached the inner city. It is important to note that in this story, I was only 7 years old, blissfully unaware of many aspects of the world. Consequently, my recollection of the individuals involved and their appearances might be somewhat inaccurate. At that time, my primary focus revolved around Minecraft and collecting Beanie Boos, rather than being aware of the potential dangers or unfamiliar people. After driving for approximately 2 hours, I informed my mother that I needed to use the bathroom. Having consumed 2 water bottles, my bladder was demanding attention. Since we were still in a busy city area, there were several gas stations and convenience stores where we could stop. My mother also inquired if I was hungry, and my enthusiastic response confirmed my desire for some rare junk food treats. Consequently, we took an exit and came across a Quick Trip convenience store shortly after. Filled with excitement, I eagerly anticipated grabbing my favorite chips, candy, and a sugary drink indulgences I didn't frequently enjoy. Exiting the car, my mother took her purse, and together we entered the store to use the restroom. Patiently, my mother waited outside while I relieved myself, and after a few minutes, we roamed the store, selecting snacks and drinks. My haul included dill pickle Lays, Rolo candies, Cheetos, sausage sticks, beef jerky, Sprite, and water from the cooler sections. Meanwhile, my mother gathered her own selection of items. Eventually, we made our way to the checkout counter, where we stood in line, eagerly waiting our turn. Throughout this time, I occupied myself by counting the cars in the parking lot and observing the different brands, as I had a keen interest in cars back then. Occasionally, my mother would gently tug my arm to keep up with the moving line, and I obediently followed her, displaying the clinginess typical of a 7-year-old. Once it was our turn, we greeted the cashier, paid for our purchases, and left the store with 2 bags filled with snacks and drinks. My face beamed with a wide grin, knowing that I had an ample supply of treats to last the remainder of our trip. As we concluded our transaction at the counter, a black man entered the store wearing a red Nike hoodie, black sweatpants, black shoes, and sunglasses. I took notice of him primarily because wearing sunglasses indoors was somewhat unusual. He approached the counter with a friendly smile, casually resting his arms on the surface. My mother also acknowledged his presence with a brief, polite smile and unspoken gesture meant to avoid initiating a conversation. However, the man seemed oblivious to my mother's response and shifted his attention toward the cashier. It was at this point that the situation took a sudden turn for the worse. In a playful tone, the man lightly smacked the counter and jokingly said, "Give me all your money." The cashier, visibly perplexed, regarded him with confusion, as the man acted as though he knew the cashier personally. After a few moments, the man's demeanor changed. His tone became serious, and he forcefully slammed his hands on the counter. He drew a gun and demanded money, abandoning any pretense of humor. My mother swiftly grabbed my arm and ushered me out of the store, while I remained in a state of bewilderment, almost in awe of the unfolding events. We quickly reached the car, and my mother swiftly drove away from the parking lot. The last glimpse I caught of the gas station was the man pressing his gun against the back of the cashier's head while uttering inaudible words. It has now been 7 years since that incident, and gas stations still evoke a sense of unease and anxiety within me. The Quick Trip store, where the incident took place, has since been demolished, making way for a new building. Although it may not have ended in a dramatic or chaotic fashion, The experience was undeniably scary and traumatic for me. I wanted to share my story and see if anyone else has undergone a similar ordeal or possesses additional information about the incident.